You're listening to the Quint podcast.
Should schools reopen in India or should they not? If they don't reopen now, when will be the right time to get students back to school? As the Ministry of Home Affairs announced a partial reopening of schools from 21st September, saying that students between classes 9 to 12 will be permitted to go back to schools on a voluntary basis, it's raising these questions on whether India is ready to reopen its schools or not. For some perspective on what's raising these questions and how school students have been impacted in this pandemic, especially in government schools and vulnerable communities, according to a report on Oxfam in the past 6 months, since school shut down during the beginning of the coronavirus outbreak in India, 80% of school children enrolled in government schools in 5 states in the northern belt of India did not receive any form of education. And in a sector that's been trying to transition to the digital mode desperately, only 20% of teachers working in government schools were trained for delivering classes online. So what does this data say about what is the way forward? As schools are set to reopen, how can we ensure that students across diverse groups, including the ones from marginalised communities, are not left behind? And how can India ensure a safe return to schools for students? You're tuned in to The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline-making news for you. And I'm your host, Shorbri. So we'll try to address some of the problems that the education sector is facing in India in 2 parts. In the first part of this podcast, we'll talk about whether India is prepared for a digital transition in the education sector and what have been the challenges so far. And in the next part, that is the second part of this podcast, we'll delve into how can we tackle the health concerns that comes with reopening of schools. Now, although the education sector has been affected overall in this pandemic, the effect hasn't been uniform. Since we're talking about education only in part 1 of this podcast and not the auxiliary aspects of school education such as midday meals, etc., as many experts had cautioned in the very beginning and as many ground reports had also indicated, even as states and the centre took to a technocratic approach in education enthusiastically from June onwards, the outreach of e-education was fairly restricted because of a digital divide. Now, although the digital divide is not something new, nonetheless, here's some data worth looking at. As per the NSS report of 2017-18 from the Ministry of Statistics and Programme Implementation, only 10.7% of households in the country had computers, with the rural population accounting for 4.4% and the urban population accounting for 23.4%. And that's a wide gap. And even though there's definitely more smartphone penetration in the Indian market, in rural India the penetration was noted at as low as 18% in a report published jointly by the Internet and Mobile Association of India and Kantar IMRB. In the urban populations, the figure stood at 59%. And again, we see a big rural-urban divide. But forget devices for a minute, even the availability of internet is a big issue. And going back to the NSS report again, only 23.8% of households across the country have access to the internet, with a wide rural-urban divide. There's a vast difference in internet penetration for different states as well. While in a city like Delhi, more than 50% of households have internet, according to the government's own data, only 15% of India's rural households have access to the internet, and these numbers are even lower in marginalised social groups like Dalits, Adivasis and Muslims. So, under these circumstances, has the one-size-fits-all approach in education failed? Angela Taneja, who's the campaign lead of Inequality, Education and Health at Oxfam India, explains the findings of the Oxfam report.
Yes, it was a quick fix solution that the government seemed to have found as a bit of a panic reaction to the crisis. It seemed like a ready, quick fix, but in the long run, it probably wasn't. Ignored the evidence of the digital divide and the limits of technology that we're all seeing right now. The unfortunate part is not enough thought was given to the preparation that's required, or in terms of the modalities of making it happen. On one level, probably more thought was needed to make sure that it was implementable for the end user, be it in terms of ensuring availability of instruments, availability of data, the whole digital infrastructure that a country needs when the whole country moves online. was probably one could have started a bit later, but having sorted out these problems at the beginning itself. Teachers could have received training. Their how would at least their own access to digital modes be ensured, could have received more thought. The government should have looked at more non-digital options. One should have looked, for example, at global practice, where even in the most developed, rich countries, non digital paper, pencil, worksheets, ensuring book availability, etc., was a supplement to whatever digital modes were provided. We started focusing on the education aspects, probably ignoring psychosocial support in the early stages, which is unfortunate. And of course, what one has not given enough thought to is how are we going to exit out of this chakravyuh of digital learning and online classes, and how are we going to go back to good old face-to-face instruction.
And adding some data to what Ms. Taneja said, from the 1,158 parents and 488 teachers surveyed across Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Odisha, and Uttar Pradesh between May and June 2020, it was found that over 80% of the children interviewed in these states did not even receive textbooks for this academic year to even continue with their online education. Secondly, WhatsApp turned out to be the primary mode of education in both public and private schools, followed by phone calls. But even in that, more than 75% of parents face challenges of poor connectivity or unaffordability of internet connections. Thirdly, fewer than 20% of teachers reported being given any kind of orientation on how to teach digitally. And it's not as if only government schools or marginalized communities were impacted. 59% of parents who have children studying in private schools also reported of a non-delivery of education. The study also found out that there was a lack of an initiative in starting innovative, offline and inclusive methods of education in areas where there were low infections. And if these are the figures from the 5 states, the rest of the picture can't be too different. But the one conundrum that comes up as we look at the stark data is, should schools then be reopened or not? With India fast becoming the global hotspot of coronavirus, how do we address these problems in the delivery of education? In an interview to the Quint, Sam Pitroda, a technocrat and former advisor to ex-Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, said that if India is not ready for a digital education, then it should declare this year as a 0 year.
If we can't expand digital education, which we can't today, we have to bite the bullet and say this year is a void year. We don't have reliable access to broadband that you need for education, because education is not just about text and voice. It is about graphics, video, animation, interaction. Just because you provide digital access and devices doesn't assure you that you'll be able to deliver education, because teachers don't know. Teachers themselves don't know how to operate computers. What are you saying? In schools, in villages, they have never operated digital device. So it is a huge task that we are not willing to accept. So we can't take risk today to open schools, according to me. It is a huge risk. We are putting our children, our teachers, our older people, our parents at risk, because children go there, children may pick up, they may not get affected that much, but when they come home, their grandparents will get affected. So on one hand, Corona crisis is expanding. On the other hand, children need education. We are not prepared to provide digital education. So it's better to bite a bullet and say, moratorium for a year. These children are going to live very long, 80, 100 years. So maybe a year won't make much difference.
He also gives suggestions on some sweeping structural reforms that need to be made.
Broadband connectivity to panchayats is called Bharat Broadband or NOFN. We must expedite and complete that program. That program is delayed by several years. So every panchayat has broadband connection, 100 megabit of. Then we need to really look at another program called National Knowledge Network, where we have spent billions of dollars in building infrastructure to connect all our universities, R&D labs. That infrastructure should be extended perhaps to schools also. Simultaneously, we need to train our teachers. Along with that, we need to create right content. Along with that, we need to create right platforms. So you need to start on multiple fronts right now with huge commitment of financial resources to build out digital education infrastructure.
But until that happens, even with proper guidelines to be followed by schools, as they reopen, the question is again, is it imperative to reopen schools or is it imperative to find a more equitable solution to providing education? I spoke to Mr. Santram, a government school teacher who's also a member of the Government School Teachers Association, and this is what he said.
Digital education स्टूडेंट्स के लिए ऑनलाइन तो सरकार अपनी तरफ से प्रयास कर रही है, ऑनलाइन चल भी रही है, लेकिन ऑनलाइन डिजिटल एजुकेशन
The government is taking its own initiative to promote digital education, which can only be effective if the students have a smartphone, a steady internet connection. The current situation that is not all students have access to smartphones or good connectivity, which are expensive for them. 1 GB data gets exhausted very easily as a number of classes are going on every day. Students who lack the accessibility are feeling like they are being left behind.
तो अच्छी बैंडविड्थ नहीं है, सिग्नल्स नहीं है, और सबसे बड़ी बात एक्सपेंसिव है, बच्चों के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से बहुत एक्सपेंसिव है. 1 GB डाटा थोड़ी देर में ही उनका कंज्यूम हो जाता है. ऑनलाइन क्लासेस, जूम क्लासेस, योगा क्लासेस, कई तरह की क्लासेस चल रही हैं. तो जिन बच्चों के पास में ये फैसिलिटी नहीं है, उनके मन में ये आ जाता है कि हम लोग कहीं से पिछड़ते तो नहीं जा रहे हैं.
And speaking on the reopening of schools, he also suggested that offline modes of education such as circulating syllabus content on radio and DTH cable networks should also be looked at.
और ये सारा का सारा सिलेबस 100 डेज में बड़े आराम से कंप्लीट हो सकता है. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि बहुत कुछ लॉस होता जा रहा है. सारा कुछ आप फिट रहिए, फिट रहेंगे तो
A lot of the syllabus can be taught in 100 days, so it's not like we should worry about syllabus over safety. But there should be some alternate learning systems in the offline mode for those children who lack access to phones and internet, perhaps by circulating study material through radio or through DTH cable networks. A traditional system of education would be better for children who come from poorer families, but that's unfortunately impossible right now. If classes could be arranged on a need basis, if not on a regular basis for such students, maybe they won't feel left behind.
जितनी क्लासेस अगर अरेंज हो सकती है तो उन बच्चों को बेनिफिट होगा जो अभी डिजिटल मीडिया में किसी भी तरीके से पूरी तरह से नहीं जुड़ पाए और उनके अंदर ये भावना आ रहा है कि हम लोग नहीं पढ़ पा रहे हैं. तो मेरा ये मानना है कि ऑफलाइन की तरफ भी हमें ध्यान देना चाहिए.
But as schools reopen, what will be the way ahead? What will be the challenges in making up for lost time, especially when it comes to those children who have not received any form of education in the past few months? And back to Mr. Neja here.
So, two levels of challenges when schools reopen. Firstly, keeping an eye on the infection rates probably is the first challenge to ensure kids' safety, because any reopening should not be at the expense of children's safety and well-being. But at the same time, given the fact that so much of learning time has been lost, what we probably need is a universal accelerated learning package to ensure 30 to 40 days of abridged what one calls in education circles spatial training, otherwise known as an accelerated learning program, where there's a shorter, quicker version of what children should have been learning that's delivered to everyone. Because frankly, as the evidence seems to suggest, not like even those who are on this side of the digital divide are learning particularly well. And thirdly, in terms of challenges of making up for lost time, it's not just a matter of instruction, it's also making sure children have psychosocial support. And because it was a traumatic 6 months for children, they do still need to recover and return to normalcy, would also need to be supported. Way forward, prepare for reopening, but keeping an eye on the data and ensuring that children are safe in any process of reopening. Explore non-digital modes, be it ensuring print material reach children or textbooks are distributed on time, and at the same time exploring non-digital small group teaching like has been attempted by first individual teachers in Chhattisgarh and then taken up by the government, starting with mohalla classes, just a teacher and 10 children sitting together and having some sort of instruction so children at least retain the habit of going to school.
As more than 100 million children in India are at risks of malnutrition due to the pandemic, how will reopening of schools impact children's health? Don't forget to tune in to the second part of this podcast, where we'll deep dive into whether there can be a safe return to school for students. If you like listening to this episode, please subscribe to the Big Story playlist for episodic updates. We're live on Apple, Google Podcast, Spotify, JioSaavn, and most of the other popular podcast streaming platforms. For other podcasts, please log on to the Quint website and check out the podcast section. For any feedback, shoot an email to podcasts@thequint.com.
Thanks for listening. Log on to the Quint's website and check out our other podcasts.